guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called The Most Feared Vikings. Where were the toughest warriors from? No idea, but hopefully we're going to find out. So let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
Välkommen allesammans! Where did the toughest Vikings come from? There was a region that had always the most fearsome warriors and the most successful armies in battle in the Viking Age.
That's scary.
I'm not talking about the Vikings. They were an elite kind of warrior mercenary fortress somewhere, we think, possibly located in Poland as their headquarters, but they came from all...
Wait, Poland? I didn't know that Poland was Viking area, but... Also, I think that it's really funny that they were like the elite, like they were like, I don't know, like the Marines of the time.
All over Northern Europe, really. And even the Vikings, they were not even as tough as the Vikings from the area that I'm about to tell you about now. So the question is not what modern Scandinavian country area was the toughest Vikings from, but the question is which part of Norway were the toughest Vikings from. Of course, I'm gonna have a little bit of bias here,
but
I'm
Norwegian.
telling the truth. I'm sorry, Sweden and Denmark, but you know this too. However, I'll say one thing. I'm talking about only the Viking Age here. Before the Viking Age, the Vendel period, the migration period, Sweden was by far #1, best warrior force, best technology, most victories in battle, everything. The Vendel period...
Yeah, actually what constitutes being like toughest? Like, is it the ones that kill the most people, or like there's some sort of... I don't know, like toughest I think can mean like a lot of different things.
Period is actually my favorite period in Scandinavian history, and then Sweden was #1. After the Viking Age, Denmark was absolutely #1. Denmark dominated Scandinavia for almost 1,000 years, really, okay? So I'll admit all of this.
It's a long time.
The truth on this channel, but during the Viking Age, Norway was the most feared military force, probably in the whole world at the time. Sweden in the Viking Age, they did some great things too. They went east and they won many great battles and they became part of the Vargarian Guard even in the Byzantine Empire. Great...
Do not know what that is, but it sounds a little frightening.
Warriors, but they did not want any part of a fight with Norway. As a matter of fact, the only time that they came west and fought either in Scandinavia or in England or wherever, it was mostly to help the Norwegians or the Danes to fight on their side. Battle of Svolvik is a perfect example of this. They also came to England.
I love the little like Viking ship. Obviously they were Vikings, but look at it, like looking at the whole thing, like the illustration like this, it's like, of course, like it's such a like a Viking ship.
England many times, and we think that they fought there too. Sweden were loyal allies to the Norwegians and the Danes, and we got along well. But they did not want any fight with the Norwegians. They did not want the smoke. As a matter
I'm wondering if they're like, we're gonna band together against like the Norwegians.
of fact, in the sagas, whenever a Swedish king or a ruling class, or they were debating or they were not getting along with Norway, they ended up arguing amongst themselves for many, many years before they actually ended up fighting. And that's even if they fought at all. They did not want to fight Norway. Compare that to the...
Well, but that's good. Like, first, fighting should be, and war should be like the last resource, and you first try, I would assume, even in those days, like, you want to talk things out. Like, let's discuss, and even, like, when, like, no, the last resort, well, yes, we're going to go to war, but first, like, let's try to figure out our differences, like, by talking.
The Norwegians in the sagas, when they were called upon to fight and when it was time to fight, they were like, let's go, yeah! And they pretty much set off to battle immediately with no hesitation. This is how the Norwegians were in the Viking Age. Also, we can see in the historical accounts from all over that the Swedes were the ones that were involved with the Kievan Rus and the Vargarian Guard, like I mentioned. We also have a few stories of Norwegians that came to the area as well at a few occasions. And they quickly accelerated up the ranks over the Swedes. And
yeah, I kinda, this is probably stupid of me, but I've never realized how similar like those flags are. Makes sense, obviously, that they're like neighboring countries, but it never like dawned on me like, oh, they're like the same flag.
To the top of the military and became commanders even in the Byzantine Empire. Harald Hardrada is a perfect example of this. I did a video.
Like the Byzantine Empire, to me, like it's like on a different part of where I think like the Vikings were sort of like gathering around. So like it makes like, wow, this is kind of crazy, right? Like they were kind like all over Europe.
About that. So there are sources for all this, I promise. Links will be below. This video is already going to be long enough. It takes too much time for me to go over a dozen sources for every little claim I make, but please, you can just watch my other videos. I promise I'm the only one on YouTube who cites their sources as much as I do when speaking about the Viking Age, whereas 99% of other people on YouTube are just talking garbage. So trust me, if you want to. There are 40,000 people now subscribed who trust me, and I know I'm not making things up. If you disagree with anything I say, that's cool. Leave a Viking story. We would love to hear. Write it down in the comments if you know any stories of the Vikings from your homeland, and we can all share stories. Just please cite the sources at least. And
I love like how he's saying this, because it sounds like, oh, I personally have a story, like I was there when it happened and I can tell you like this and this and that.
No, Vikings TV show is not a source. Now Denmark was far more
usually
powerful at this time. They were great, and they were by far the largest force. We all know about their conquests in the west, you know, Normandy, England, and most of England was even under Danish control for certain periods of the Viking Age. The Danes were for sure the most influential.
So the ones like all that like Viking influence that the UK has, it actually comes from like the Danish Vikings. That's surprising to me. I thought it was like Norwegians, I would believe.
Vikings. But they were not stronger than the Norwegians. The Danes actually did, unlike Sweden, they actually did fight against the Norwegians many times during the Viking Age. They lost almost every battle, and especially if it was a battle at sea, they lost every single one, even when the Norwegians were a much, much smaller force. For example, in a saga of Håkon the Good, the Danes were attacking with a massive army at what is now Frede, or Frey. King Håkon only had 9 ships of his men, and he beat the massive Danish army. Another is the Battle of Jørgenavåg, which is now
so that speaks very good. Like, it's not about quantity, it's about quality.
A place called Liavåg. The Danes attacked here with a much larger force when Håkon the Jarl was kind of in charge of Norway, and in this battle the Danes actually enlisted the help of a large army of Jomsvikings, and still the Norwegians won the battle.
Literally like mercenaries for hire.
Even think about the battle when the Holy Roman...
They're probably like paying him like, well, probably like coins, like gold coins, but maybe like barley or grains.
Emperor Otto invaded Denmark at Danavirki. The Norwegians were actually helping Denmark here, and they beat the entire Holy Roman Empire by themselves.
Oh my god,
When the Empire attacked again, just a few days later, when the Norwegians were not there, Denmark lost the battle within a day, and they all ended up converting to Christianity. I did a whole video on that. That will also be in the link below.
It's crazy, like that. The stakes are very high. Like, imagine like, oh, we lost the battle, and well, that's bad. He's like, no, we ended up losing the battle, and everyone had to like convert to, now everyone's Catholic.
On the other hand, yes, we actually do sometimes see Denmark ruling over Norway in the Viking Age at a few periods.
So it happened.
This was only when the Norwegians wanted it. It was not a takeover. Norway had
that's very condescending.
Some very unstable established kingdoms in the Viking Age, and a few very, very bad kings. So Norway let Denmark actually rule over it, because we like Denmark, and they had some great kings. Harald Bluetooth at the start of his kingdom, at least.
That's the guy. I'm guessing Bluetooth is named after this guy, right?
Svein Forkbeard, Knut the Great. They were wonderful Danish kings of Norway. But yes, Norway was the best warrior force in the Viking Age, and Denmark was the best after the Viking Age. Sweden was the best.
What actually constitutes like after the Viking Age? Like, aren't all Vikings like by nature specifically of the Viking Age?
Before the Viking Age. No need to get butthurt. We all have our glory days, and I'm going to do other videos very soon about how Denmark and Sweden were the best warriors at different periods of time, but the Viking Age belongs to Norway, not even debatable. So where in Norway was the most fearsome warrior force from? Very simple. Trondheim. And the surrounding kind of areas, we can also say Hålogaland. Now today, Trondheim is just a city. It wasn't established, though, until the late Viking Age, and then it was going to be called...
Oh, so it looks like maybe it's just like frozen, like ice, but apparently it's a city?
Called Nidaros. But Trondheim in the Viking Age was a general area, about the same area of what we call Trøndelag now, a county. So
yeah, like how much of a city could it actually be, like in this particular time period? Like it wasn't like an actual city, it was just like a settlement, I would assume.
Then we also have Hålogaland, and that was basically the area extending from Trondheim all the way up to Lyngenfjord. I'm not biased, okay? I wish
Is that like the fjords?
that the toughest Vikings were from my home, Vestfold, right here. But
How
I'm just being
convenient.
honest. Trøndelag and Hålogaland throughout the Viking Age were always home to the most fearsome and powerful warriors. First,
Person
we
would
can
say
say
that.
this because really we have many legends and heroes from the Viking Age that were either born in Trondheim or Hålogaland or had family lineage that was from there. We can say Egil Skallagrimsson, Erik Bloodaxe, Håkon the Jarl, possibly even Ivar the Boneless, or even the Rollo, Torehun, Hårek of Tjöta, and even Olav Tryggvason, we can say, even though he was a horrible man, but he was actually a great warrior. Also very important, you were not
Yeah,
considered...
those things are not like mutually exclusive. Like you can be a great warrior and also like a really bad guy.
King of all Norway until you had the approval and allegiance of the chieftains, in Trondheim especially. There were many kingdoms in Norway, but if one was to gain support of the whole country, the king would have to travel to Trondheim and find some way to get support from the people there. We have many examples of this in the saga.
I would think like that makes sense. Like you need, like if you want to rule over like a certain amount of people, like you need their support. It's not just, hey guys, I'm your king. It's like, okay, so and who are you again? Like you need like people to be like, yeah, we want you as king, or at least be feared. Like it's one of those. Like either be likable and people like you, they want you to be king, or you're like so feared that people just do not have any like, okay, well, I assume that you're my king because I'm scared, so sure.
They would also, the kings would commonly take a permanent residence in Trondheim and set up a throne there. They did a lot of places, but Trondheim was definitely a popular spot to set up the throne. Harald Fairhair, Håkon the Good, Olav Tryggvason.
Did they also have like face tattoos back in those days? Or I'm guessing that's like a movie or a show. It's like artistic license, or did they actually had like, no, the face tattoos were a thing back then. I'm wondering how they actually did them.
Olav the Saint, Harald Hardrada, they all had very important dealings with the chieftains of Trondheim, and they all knew from the beginning of the Viking Age pretty much all the way up to the end, the goal was to get support of Trondheim if they were going to be a unified king. Also, we can look at the many great battles.
It's good. It also speaks like they knew like how like the political like stuff worked, which is like, yeah, I mean, they weren't just like barbarians and saying like, yes, you have an axe and I'm gonna kill you. Like a lot of like violence. I think there were also like political, like they knew what they were doing.
Wherever there was a battle, either Norwegian kingdoms against each other, or if Norway was out fighting other countries, whatever side the armies of Trondheim were fighting on was almost always the winners in these battles. They were also almost always at the front lines of every battle. When Denmark invaded Norway with a massive army with the Jomsvikings on their side, Battle of Hjørundavåg, like I mentioned a minute ago, the description of this battle is basically the Trønders versus the Jomsvikings, the two strongest army forces in the world pretty much, and at the very center of the battle, and the Norwegians, the Trønders, of course, came away with the victory. Another one, which we have, it's probably the best battle of the Viking Age pretty much, is the Battle of
what constitutes like the greatest battle.
Folded. And here the Norwegian rebels joined with the Swedes and the Danes, brought the fight to the treacherous King Olav Tryggvason with his army of newly converted Norwegians. Also Vendels and pretty much any other Christian warrior in Northern Europe at the time pretty much.
Oh, it's because everyone joined.
And he actually had the Jomsvikings on his side here too. But again, at the center of the battle was Eirik Håkonason and the Trønders, storming the ships of Olav Tryggvason and the Jomsvikings, getting into it while everyone else was on the outskirts of the battle, kind of shooting arrows in towards the center. Another one, the Battle of Stiklestad, another one where the Trenders won back control of all Norway. I can go on all day with examples. I'll say one more thing that makes these people the toughest.
I'm wondering if his dad means city, because I know that other languages, like, it means something. I think it's also, like, in Dutch, I think it means something as well. Like, I've seen towns, like, they're kind of, like, named with this dad thing.
Vikings. The Christianization of Norway. Trondheim and Hålogaland are always the ones who resisted the longest and remained true to the old gods, to the old faith. Many examples of this. There were not just one, but many attempts to Christianize Norway, and the North always stood the longest. Håkon the Good, Olav Tryggvason, Olav the Saint, Harald Hardrada, they all came to Trondheim first to try and convert the Trønders, and the Trønders basically told them to fuck off with all that bullshit, we shall remain pagan here. And the kings were always terrified of this because they knew they could not stand up to the people of Trondheim and the army there at the time. Many times, but specifically in Olav Tryggvason's saga, he was turned away when he asked the...
Is this a real thing that exists? Because that's a really big statue, I think.
Trønders to convert to Christianity, and he went around all of Norway trying to convert every other little place in Norway, building his army, growing like a snowball. Then he gets to Trondheim again eventually.
That's usually how it goes. You need like a small campaign to actually like ban as much people as you can.
And he tells them to convert, and they again tell him, fuck you, we don't want to, we shall remain pagan. And Olav was still not strong enough to stand up to the armies of Trondheim, even with the armies from all over Norway with him.
That's crazy.
To convert Trondheim, he had to cowardly assassinate one of the leaders and take hostages from all the other chieftains in the area to get them to convert, which even then it did not last long. Even after that...
Yeah, like it's treason, right? Like that's bad.
When Olav Tryggvason converted them, he had to also convert the people further north in Hålogaland. And these were some serious motherfuckers all the way up here. They were very pagan, and they were good with magic too. And they literally had the whole country of...
Casually, they were good with magic. Okay, but that's not really like a thing in real life, so... What?
Norway and New...
We just like closed over that.
Armies from Trondheim all coming to battle, and Hålogaland fought them off in many tough battles, but they eventually did get beat after their leader was also cowardly assassinated and after hostages were taken from nobles. So that's why I included Hålogaland in the list of toughest Vikings, because... You know, we don't have a lot of stories of them. We have a few like this, but they are not mentioned as much in the sagas as Trondheim was, for example. It's because up there they were probably just not too bothered what was going on and the political affairs and the rest of Norway.
They were just like way too isolated. We don't care what's happening like in the southern part of like this area. We just do not care. It's way too cold here. Like we have our own issues.
Norway, and they kind of kept to themselves. But they were absolutely just as fearsome of warriors as Trondheim was, and they were pagan for much longer. Hundreds of years, in my opinion. We have records and evidence of them keeping pagan traditions alive a lot more than the rest of Norway. So that's all. I hope you enjoyed. We can even say this today, actually. Modern Norway, people from Trøndelag and the northern counties of Norway are usually a little bit tougher, and they don't take any shit. And they are kind of the ones...
Again, he's probably from there, so of course he's gonna say this.
...who stand up for their freedoms and their way of life a bit more than the rest of Norway. And also many of the best fighters and athletes come from either Trøndelag or northern Norway.
Like today?
Again, I'm not biased. I am not from here. I have no family in Trøndelag, no history there, no motivations, nothing. I'm just being honest. My family is from here as far back as we have records. But I'm trying to change this. You can follow my MMA career. Hoping to go pro and bring some glory back to Vestfold. But yeah, that's all for today. Vi ses nästa gång.
Okay, this was very interesting. I like this. It's like I don't really know much. Like apparently I do not know anything about like the Viking age or the Viking period or just like the Vikings in general. But I think like it's good because I believe like at least the picture I have in my mind of like the Vikings, I think they were very like they were a group of people that were just like into like fighting, and there were again like barbarians. They were just like killing each other and just fighting. But I think like this, like videos like this show me that no, it's not really they were just into like a lot of fighting. No, they were actually very, I think, politically inclined, and there was like a rhyme and reason why they were like doing the things they did. Obviously, I think that's probably the case, but I think probably it's because probably I don't know, like reality I think it tends to be like a little bit different. But I think the cultural, I think probably yes, because I'm trying to think of like something specific that I can remember about Vikings, but I cannot remember. I think it's just in the cultural sort of like in my brain, and just culturally I think Vikings are sort of like the thing, like they teach you, oh, they were like a fearsome group of people that everyone feared because they were very violent, and they just like wanted like to rape and kill and rampage like cities and settlements. And you would think like, oh, of course, like they were just like a bunch of like guys, and they were like with their axes and their swords and just like into, yeah, we're gonna kill everyone. But I think like no, it wasn't usually like this. It's also like a lot of these is, I think it's about religion. It has to do with religion specifically. And of course, like the other empires that were happening like in Europe around this time period. And I think that gets a little bit lost, I think, again, culturally. And unless you're super like into this and to this like history and the Vikings in general, I don't think you would know, because probably I know that I'm not the only one that thinks like this. It's like, no, I think like history and probably again culturally they get a bad rap, but there was like much more like that than what I think usually is presented. Because again, you would think, oh, they were just like, yes, we're killing everyone and we're feared and that's it. It's like, no, they were like, again, they were also like, they were group inside of them, like they were also fighting. There was a lot of fighting in between them, but also there was also this thing of again, they were kings, and they were again as just as in the, and I'm saying like it's separate from the rest of Europe because it was something that was sort of like separate from the rest of Europe. Like the thing, like the European subplot was happening, and it was like this whole other thing. But I like, just as in Europe, there was like the Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire and the other sort of empires, and everyone was doing their own thing. Again, I think like it's been presented, or at least that had been my belief previously, that they were like probably more organized, and they were more, yes, they're creating like the great political sort of like things that we have in this day and age. Which, in a way, yes, of course, a lot of the things we have these days come from like the Romans and stuff. But the Vikings, it's not that they left like such a huge, probably like a big impression in all over Europe or in the world really. But they were their own distinct culture. And again, they were organized. They weren't just like belligerent because of like, yes, we're gonna kill everyone because we're like bloodthirsty. It's like, no, it is a thing that they wanted to conquer because of a specific reason, or they again like the king, and it was a lot about like being stuck. Like no, they were coming to invade us, and of course we like our own way of life. And we do not want to be invaded. Of course, that's just like only natural. That's going to happen in every single culture, like throughout history. And especially, I think religion, like it's a very, very, like it's a sore, and always it is kind of like a sore spot and a sore subject. And people are, again, because like it's the core of beliefs that someone has. So of course, like if a culture has, we believe in like a specific thing. We believe in like the old gods. I'm not sure like what exactly they believed in. I know they were pagan, but I do not really know what that entailed or entails even in this day and age. I have no idea. Probably like things having to do with like a lot of nature, and probably they believed in like the god of rain and the god of the sky and the god of fire, stuff like that, but I'm not that sure. And that's what you believe in. And of course comes someone that's like, no, we like, there's a god, there's just one god. They're like the god of rain that doesn't exist, the god of the sun that doesn't exist, is there just one god. You're gonna fight to preserve, obviously, like what you believe in, because it's something that you actually do. Like, no, that's what I believe. And again, my whole persona and our own culture is based on that. Of course, we want to protect it. So I kind of feel bad that they lost. It's sad. I think they had to convert to Christianity, which I think, whatever way you look at it, I think must have been like really sad and quite traumatizing probably for them, because probably like that first generation, they just like were conquered and they didn't really have a choice. It's like, yes, people were, we lost. So now apparently we believe in this and we have to leave our pagan traditions behind. But they didn't probably believe in it. It's like their heart was not in it. It's like, no, it's only because we were conquered and we lost. But probably that it's hard to preserve those kind of traditions and that sort of beliefs, especially in a system that is really working against you trying to remember these kind of things. So I'm wondering, like, again, by the second or third generation after being conquered, of course they were going to believe in, like, they were going to be Christians, something like, yes, to God and all that. But obviously the ones, like, I'm wondering about like that first generation and the ones that actually like were the losing part. I feel bad for them because it was like, it must have been like really hard. Like, no, we lost, and apparently now we have to believe in something else, and we are probably, I don't know how they were practicing their religion, but I have to guess they were probably being punished. Like, no, they were actually being punished if they practiced any of that paganism. So it's kind of like, what a sad situation for everyone involved, which, well to say, because this happened like thousands of years ago. But I think, again, it makes me a little sad to think of like those first few people that were actually all the Vikings that were conquered, and they had to change their whole system of beliefs to something that they probably didn't really believe in. But it's like we're losing our ways, and that there's no going back. Like, our grandkids and our great grandkids, they're not. All of this is going to be lost, and that's a sad way to however you look at it. But I know that's just me. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.